The smell of burnt hair and rotting cloth filled the air. The guards didn't care. They dragged my friends one by one to the front of the line. They didn't scream anymore. We had no voice left. I looked down at my arm, at the number they had burned into my skin a year ago. It was almost faded now, 26091. At first, we thought the numbers were just to count us. But it wasn't that simple. Yesterday, number 26087 didn't return from the food line. Today, 26088 was beaten to death for stumbling. Now 26090 stood in front of me, shaking. The guard barked something in German. I didn't need to understand the words. I already knew. 26090 was next. A shot rang out. My best friend Samuel, number 26090, fell to the ground, blood leaking from the back of his neck. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I was next in line. The guard looked at his paper, then at my number. He stared for a moment longer than usual. Then he said something in German again. Another guard whispered to him. They both looked at me. Then they stepped back. The gun didn't fire. I was pushed back into the group. That night, I stared at the ceiling of the cold bunk, heart racing. Why didn't they shoot me? Samuel was gone. The ones before him were gone. Everyone was going one after the other. What did my number mean? Then I remembered something Samuel had once whispered. They're not killing us randomly. They're following the numbers. I was 26091. And now, I was the last one left. Cliffhanger. A loud whistle cut the night air. Boots stomped the ground outside. A light shone through the cracks of the wooden walls. They were coming again. A year earlier, everything was different. I was just a boy from Krakow. I lived with my parents, my sister Alana, and my dog, Mickey. We were in a small bakery. Mama made the best rye bread in the neighborhood. Papa always said, bread is hope. We give people hope. But in 1939, when the Germans came, even hope was taken. They wore gray coats and black boots, and their voices cracked like fire. They walked into our bakery one morning and told Papa he needed to register all Jewish properties. A week later, our shop was shut down. Our home was searched. Then Alana's school stopped letting her in. Then we were moved. The ghetto was crowded, cold, and full of whispers. People disappeared every night. I held Alana's hand tightly every time we walked outside. One morning, the soldiers came again. But this time, they didn't talk. They just shouted. They shoved us into trucks. Mama was crying. Papa tried to protect Alana, but they hit him in the face with a rifle. Blood poured from his nose. We were all taken to the camp. That was the last day I saw my parents. When I arrived, they lined us up. Men on one side, women and children on the other. Alana tried to run to me, but a guard stopped her. I was screaming. She was screaming. And someone hit me so hard I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying in a bunk. My arm burned. There was a number, fresh, red, and swollen. 26,091. That was the day I met Samuel. He was already branded. He had been there 2 weeks. He helped me sit up and drink water. He told me the number wasn't just for tracking. It was for something worse. He said he saw a man get dragged away. And the next day, the next number disappeared too. We watched the pattern for weeks. It always followed the numbers. One by one. No skips. No breaks. And then the guards started calling at the countdown. Samuel and I promised we'd survive. He taught me how to eat slowly so the food lasted longer. He showed me which guards to avoid. He even made up jokes just to make me smile. But deep down, we both knew what was coming. We counted as the others vanished. 26083 gone. 26084 gone. 26085 gone. One day, 26,086 cried all night. The next morning, his bunk was empty. When we were down to the last 5, Samuel started having nightmares. He said he dreamed that all of us were gone, and he was the only one left. But that wasn't the nightmare. The real nightmare was that I was the last one. Now, lying on that wooden plank in the dark, with Samuel's blood still fresh in my mind, I knew the truth. I wasn't skipped. They were saving me for something. Extreme event ending. The wooden door to our hut slammed open. A soldier barked a name. 261 My number. 2 guards rushed in. One grabbed my arm. The other held a sack over my head. Before I could move, the darkness swallowed me. They dragged me for what felt like forever. I couldn't see through the sack, but I could feel the cold wind against my skin. My bare feet scraped over gravel, then snow, then wood. The air changed, fresh but sharp. The smell of smoke and something worse burned my nose. They didn't speak. The only sounds were the crunch of their boots and the occasional cough from the guard behind me. Then we stopped. The sack was yanked off. I blinked hard. A bright floodlight shone in my face. Behind it stood a group of officers, clean uniforms, shiny boots, hard faces. In the middle, a man in a long coat stepped forward. His boots were so polished I could see my face in them. He looked down at my arm and said, in slow, careful German, "This one is last." I didn't know what that meant, but the way he said it, it sounded like a plan, like they had been waiting for me. He turned to another officer and gave a command. "Clean him, feed him, then bring him to Block 13. What? Two other guards grabbed me again. This time, they weren't rough. They took me to a small room with a bucket of warm water. Warm. I hadn't felt warmth in months. They scrubbed my skin. They gave me clothes, not rags like before, but a real shirt and pants, though still striped. They gave me bread and hot soup. I almost cried tasting it. Why were they doing this? Later, they brought me to Block 13. It was nothing like the others. It had a metal door and a lock. Inside, there was only one bunk. A chair, a light, and a small window I couldn't reach. The door locked behind me. I sat in silence. Hours passed, maybe days. A man came in once a day to give me food. Sometimes he stared at me for too long. Other times he dropped the plate and walked out without a word. I started to lose track of time. Then one night I heard voices outside. "We need him alive until it's done. What if the Americans get here first? Then we burn all. But he must stay alive. Until the signal." I pressed my ear to the door, heart pounding. What were they talking about? Why me? A week later, it all became clear. They opened the door and told me to walk. I stepped outside. The camp looked strange, quiet, empty. Smoke curled in the distance. They brought me to a long underground hall. Inside were desks, radios, maps, and machines. A man in a white coat pointed to me and said, "Yes, he's the match." Then he held up something, an old-looking metal box with a needle and paper inside. He showed me a line that spiked up and down. "This is why we saved you," he said. "Your blood, your resistance. You were the last one of the test group. The others failed. You didn't." He pulled up my sleeve and touched my branded number with a shaking hand. 26091, the final control. I didn't understand a word. The only thing I understood was this. Everyone else was gone because of something they put in our food or air or skin. Some kind of experiment. They were testing things, watching how we reacted. Samuel, the others, they weren't just killed. They were being watched. And I was the last one because I was the success. My body had survived something it wasn't supposed to. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the number off my skin. But I just stood there, frozen. The man in the coat leaned closer. "You are a very lucky boy." Then I finally spoke. I said no. I'm just the last one left to remember. Extreme event ending. A loud explosion rocked the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. A siren screamed. One of the soldiers burst into the room and shouted, "They're here. The Allies. They've breached the fence." The man in the coat dropped the metal box. Guards grabbed their guns. The room filled with chaos. And no one was watching me. I ran. I ran through the smoke-filled hall, heart racing faster than my feet. Sirens screamed behind me. The ground shook with distant booms, gunfire, grenades, or maybe tanks. I didn't look back. The hallway split into two. I chose the left. My legs burned. I hadn't run like this in months. Maybe years. My body wanted to give up, but my fear kept dragging me forward. I passed open rooms filled with documents, machines, and cages. Real cages. Some still had bones inside. Then I found stairs. I climbed them two at a time until I burst out into open air. The sky was black with smoke, but I could see flashes, red and orange, lighting the night like lightning. The camp was no longer quiet. Gunfire cracked in every direction. Guards shouted in German. Men in green, uniforms pushed through the gates, Allied soldiers. I dove behind a stack of crates. My chest heaved. I couldn't stop shaking. Then a voice, loud, American and close. "Hey, Over here. I turned. A soldier, helmet tilted, face dirty, was aiming his gun at me. He yelled again, "Don't move." I raised my hands. I'm not one of them. I shouted in broken English. "Please." He moved closer. His eyes scanned my striped clothes. Then he saw the number on my arm. His face changed. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. He lowered his gun and called behind him, "We got a survivor." Another soldier ran over. They both helped me up. Their hands were warm. I started crying before I even knew I was crying. They wrapped a blanket around me. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. They led me past burning guard towers, past dead bodies, past piles of things I didn't want to look at. Other prisoners were being let out too, barefoot, broken, but alive. They took me to a tent just outside the camp. Doctors, nurses, soldiers everywhere. One nurse gasped when she saw my number. Another whispered. They marked them like animals. I sat on a cot, shaking. My body was free, but my mind was still trapped in Block 13. A tall officer came in. He knelt beside me and asked gently, "Can you tell me your name?" I nodded. "Jakob," I said. "Jakob Feldman." He wrote it down. "We'll get you help, Jakob. You're safe now." Safe. Was I? They didn't know what they had done to me. They didn't know I was the final control. The one who survived the poison, the sickness, the slow killing. I wasn't just a prisoner. I was a part of something they hadn't even begun to understand. And I didn't either. For days, I lay on the cot. Nurses cleaned my wounds. They gave me clean water and warm soup. They even gave me a small Bible, but I couldn't read it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Other survivors came in. Some had lost their minds. Some cried all day. Others just stared into nothing. We were free, but we weren't whole. One night, I woke up screaming. I had dreamed of Samuel, of the way he fell, of the blood. A nurse ran in. She held my hand. "Bad dream?" she whispered. I didn't answer. She gently touched the number on my arm. "What does it mean?" I stared at it. I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want to say the words out loud, but they burned in my throat. I was the last one. She looked confused. Everyone before me, they're dead, one by one. That number means I was meant to be last. She shook her head. "You're not the last, Jakob. You're just one of the first to live." I didn't believe her. That night, I got up and walked outside. The camp behind me still smoked. I stood near the fence. A single guard tower remained, burnt, empty. Then I saw something shiny near the base. I walked closer and found it, an ID tag. German letters. I picked it up, and behind it, half buried in the dirt, was a small notebook. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were rows of numbers. Dates, notes, diagrams. At the very bottom, 26091 alive. Blood sample stable. Final result achieved. I dropped the book like it was on fire. So it was real. Everything Samuel feared. Everything we guessed. They had planned to kill us all. But not before they learned what made us different. And I was what they were looking for. Extreme event ending. A soldier nearby shouted my name. "Jakob." I turned around, just in time to see a man step from the woods. He was wearing a Nazi officer's coat, and he was holding a pistol. The soldier yelled again, "Jakob, get down." But my legs froze. My eyes locked on the man in the Nazi coat. His face was half covered in ash, but I recognized him. He was the one who gave the order. The one who said, "This one is last." The officer raised the pistol. Then, bang, the shot rang out, but I didn't feel anything. I flinched, expecting pain. Then I looked up. The man had fallen. A red stain spread across his chest. Behind him stood the American soldier, rifle raised, smoke curling from the barrel. He ran to me. "You okay?" I nodded slowly, though my whole body trembled. He looked down at the dead officer and muttered. He almost got away. That night, they tightened camp security. No one was allowed to wander. I was questioned for hours by Allied intelligence. They wanted to know everything, what the officers said, what I saw underground, what they did to us. I told them what I could, but I didn't tell them about the notebook. Not yet. I hid it under my cot, wrapped in cloth. Something in me said to hold on to it. Days passed. More survivors were rescued. I started talking more, small words, slow thoughts. I met a boy named Eli who had escaped from another camp. We talked about bread. That was all. Bread. What it smelled like. What it felt like fresh from the oven. It was the only safe topic we had. But even in safety, the number haunted me. 26,091. One afternoon, a man with thick glasses came to the medical tent. He said he was from the Red Cross. "I'm here to help you," he said kindly. "We want to take you to a recovery center in France. With real beds, real food, books." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. But when he saw my arm, everything changed. His voice got quiet. "Did they experiment on you?" I shrugged. "I don't know." He leaned in closer. "We've heard rumors of medical trials. Strange tests. Some say survivors were selected." That word. Selected. I asked, "Why me?" He didn't answer. He just took notes and left. That night, I pulled the notebook out again. I flipped past the numbers until I found a page labeled results. There were strange drawings, cells, blood, lines pointing to things I didn't understand. Then I saw it. Subject 26091. Immune to X32. All others failed. Proceed with extraction once subject shows stable signs. I didn't know what X32 was, but the word immune was clear. I was different, but I didn't feel strong. I felt broken. That same night, the camp fell into chaos again. A truck exploded near the fence. Gunshots fired. Someone yelled, "Escape!" They're escaping. A small group of German loyalists had attacked during the night, trying to destroy what was left to erase the evidence. Nurses screamed. One tent caught fire. I searched for Eli in the dark. I found him crawling behind a barrel, his leg bleeding. I grabbed him and pulled him toward the woods. We had to hide. Soldiers ran past, shouting orders. I held Eli close behind a tree as flames lit the sky. "We can't go back," he whispered. "I know," I said. We waited until the gunfire faded. Then I led him through the trees. I didn't know where we were going, just away. After an hour, we reached a small river. Eli drank from it, then leaned against a rock. "What now?" he asked. I pulled out the notebook. "We find someone who can read this," I said. "Someone who can tell the truth." He looked confused. "Why?" "Because they'll try again," I said. "If we don't tell the world, they'll try again." Extreme event ending. Then from across the river, I heard something move. A shape. A man, holding a flashlight. He was wearing a white coat, and on his sleeve was the same red and black armband I thought I'd never see again. The beam of the flashlight flicked across the trees. I grabbed Eli and pulled him lower behind the rocks. The man on the other side of the river moved slowly, carefully, like he was hunting. He wasn't a soldier, not with that long white coat and calm steps. He was a doctor, one of them. The flashlight scanned the water. It stopped, right where we were hiding. He said something in German. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the tone, cold and sure. I held my breath. Eli whimpered. The man stepped closer to the edge of the riverbank. I could see his face now, clean-shaven, calm eyes. He was the same man who had held the metal box in the underground lab, the one who said, "He's the match." I couldn't believe it. He was still alive and still hunting. He pulled something from his pocket, a small mirror, and angled it toward our side of the river. He was trying to see us through the reflection. I couldn't wait any longer. I grabbed a rock and hurled it to the left, away from us. It crashed through the trees. The doctor turned, gun raised, and fired 3 quick shots into the dark. "Run," I whispered Eli. We scrambled to our feet and dashed deeper into the woods. The doctor shouted something behind us. Branches tore my arms and face. Eli stumbled once, but I pulled him up. We didn't stop until the river was far behind us. We found an old barn. Empty, broken, but it had 4 walls and a roof. Inside, we collapsed. I could feel my chest heaving like it might explode. Eli's leg was bleeding worse now. I tore a piece of my shirt and wrapped it around his knee. "Who was that?" he asked. "Someone who should have burned with the rest of them," I said. We stayed in the barn for 2 nights. We survived off stolen apples and cold rainwater. Then, on the 3rd day, we heard wheels. A wagon, pulled by an old brown horse, came slowly up the road. An old man sat on the front bench, humming. He looked harmless. I stepped out, waving my hands. "Please, help." He stopped. His eyes widened when he saw our clothes. "Camp?" he asked. I nodded. He looked around, then said, "Come." Quickly, he hid us under hay and covered us with blankets. We rode in silence. He took us to a village called Cherwian, just across the Polish border. There, a woman named Marta took us in. She gave us warm food and new clothes. She didn't ask many questions, just said, "You're safe now." But I didn't believe that anymore. I'd seen too much. At night, I couldn't sleep. I would stare at the notebook, flipping through the pages again and again. Everywhere I looked, the same phrase repeated. Subject 26091. Final control. Do not destroy. They hadn't been planning to kill me. They had been planning to keep me. I thought of Samuel again. He had said once, maybe they'll let us live if they get what they want. But I had lived, and now I knew what they wanted. One night, Marta walked in on me, staring at the notebook. She asked what it was. I hesitated, then handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Her eyes moved across the German writing. After a while, she looked at me and said, "This is proof." I nodded. "We must give it to someone," she said. "The world must know." We left Cherwien the next morning. Marta arranged a truck with other refugees heading to a Red Cross camp near Munich. But even as the road took us farther from the camp, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Every time we stopped, I checked the shadows. Every time a man stared too long, I washed his hands. And then, one evening near the German border, a soldier boarded the truck to check IDs. He wore the uniform of the Allies. His papers were perfect, his English flawless. But I knew that face. Extreme event ending. It was the doctor from the river. He looked right at me and smiled. The smile didn't touch his eyes. It was the kind of smile you see in nightmares, small, sharp, like a wolf watching its prey. He didn't say my name, didn't call attention, just looked at me, held my stare for a heartbeat too long, then moved on. But I knew. He knew. I turned to Marta. "That's him," I whispered. The doctor. Her face paled. She tried to act normal, but her fingers trembled. The truck began to move again. The doctor took a seat at the front, chatting politely with the driver. Pretending. I clutched the notebook tighter. We had to act fast. When the truck made a stop for water, Marta whispered plan. "Next village we run. I'll distract him. You take Eli. Go." "No," I said. "He'll kill you." She touched my cheek. "Let me be useful, Jakob. Let me do one good thing." I didn't have time to argue. At the next stop, she stood up quickly and stumbled forward, spilling her bag in front of the doctor. Pots, food, cloth, all crashing down. The driver cursed and tried to help. The doctor stood, annoyed, trying to step around her. "Now," Marta hissed. I grabbed Eli's arm and leapt from the back of the truck, landing hard on the road. We ran, down the slope, through trees, over a ditch. Behind us, we heard shouting. I didn't look back. I held on to Eli's hand and didn't stop until we reached a hilltop. Below was a small town with a railway station at the center. Trains puffed slowly along the tracks, carrying cargo and people westward. We crouched in the bushes, catching our breath. Eli's lips were cracked. Did we lose him? I think so, I said, though I didn't believe it. We made it into town that night. We bought 2 tickets with coins Marta had given us earlier. The train would take us to Munich. I kept my head down the whole ride, clutching the notebook like it was my heart. When we arrived, we went straight to the Red Cross camp. A guard stopped us at the gate, asking questions. I showed them the notebook. 10 minutes later, we were in a warm room with 2 officers, a nurse, and a translator. I told them everything. They wrote it all down. When I handed over the notebook, one of them gasped. This is real. They said I would be taken to Geneva. A special tribunal was being prepared. Trials. Testimonies. They wanted me to speak. But I wasn't ready. That night, I stared into the mirror in the camp bathroom. I barely recognized the boy looking back. Then I saw something behind me. A figure. Just outside the window. He was watching me. The doctor. Again. I turned, but he vanished into the dark. I couldn't breathe. The next morning, I told the officers. They put guards outside my door. But it wasn't enough. 2 days later, the camp was attacked. A bomb went off in the medical wing. People screamed. Fires erupted. Through the smoke, I saw the doctor running toward me. Gun raised. Extreme event ending. He fired once. I felt the heat slice past my cheek. Then he aimed again at Eli. "No!" I screamed, diving toward Eli. The shot rang out. I crashed into him, both of us hitting the floor hard. My ears rang. I couldn't tell if I'd been shot. All I felt was heat, smoke, and fear. Eli groaned under me, clutching his side. Blood, but he was alive. The doctor stepped forward, gun still in his hand, his face calm like he was taking a stroll through a garden. Jakob, he said softly, you don't understand. You're not supposed to be out here. You belong to history. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a metal stool, and threw it at him. He ducked, but the moment gave me time to grab Eli and run. We pushed through burning curtains, past collapsing shelves, and into the open field behind the camp. Soldiers were fighting in the distance, trying to regain control. I could hear someone shouting orders in English. Don't stop, I told Eli. Just keep going. He staggered beside me, his leg dragging. Then, gunfire behind us. The doctor was chasing, but suddenly bang, a shot fired from the trees. The doctor dropped to one knee. His shoulder poured blood. An Allied soldier appeared from the trees, rifle raised. Down on the ground, he shouted. The doctor smiled and popped a small pill into his mouth. He convulsed and dropped, dead before he hit the ground. The soldier ran to us. Are you hurt? Eli nodded weakly. He's gone, but I didn't feel relief. Just silence. A storm inside my chest. They took us back to the camp. Doctors rushed Eli into a tent. I waited outside, hands shaking, body covered in smoke and dust. An officer came up to me. He was one of the top men, he said. We've been hunting him for months. I nodded slowly. He was hunting me too. A week later, we were flown to Geneva. A clean room, white walls, cameras, people in suits. I stood in front of a panel of judges and told them everything. What they did to us. What the notebook said. What the doctor said about my blood, my number, my survival. When I was done, no one spoke for a long time. Then the judge in the middle said, We believe you, Jakob. You've helped more people than you'll ever know. Still, I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel brave. I felt alone. After the hearing, Eli and I were placed in a recovery home for child survivors. There were 30 of us. Some could talk. Some couldn't. Every morning I sat by the window and watched birds land on the trees outside. Freedom still felt unreal. Then one morning, a nurse handed me a letter. It was from an American doctor. He had read my testimony. He wrote, Your body holds answers, Jakob. Maybe answers to save others. We want to study your blood. We won't force you. But with your help, we may stop anything like this from ever happening again. I stared at the paper. My hands trembled. Could I do it? Use what they did to me, for good? That night, I thought of Samuel, of his jokes, his whispered theories, his final breath, and I remembered what he once said. If even one of us survives to tell the truth, we win. Extreme event ending. The next morning, I walked outside to the front gate. There, waiting in a black car, were 2 American doctors, and in the man's hands was a case of vials. He smiled gently. We're ready when you are, Jakob. I stepped toward the car, the cold wind brushing against my face. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I looked down at my arm, at the faded scar where the number 26,091 still lived. I wasn't just a number anymore. I got in the car. The seat was soft, the heat humming gently. Eli stood by the gate, his leg in a brace, waving with a tired smile. I'll be back, I said. You better be, he called. The drive was quiet. The doctors didn't talk much. One read over papers. The other kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, like he couldn't believe I was real. We arrived at a clean building with tall windows and soft lights. Inside, everything smelled of medicine and paper. A nurse guided me to a room with a single chair and a small bed. This won't hurt, she said gently, unwrapping a needle. I didn't flinch. I had already survived everything that could hurt me. They drew blood, took notes, ran tests. Day after day. Then something happened. On the 5th day, a scientist burst into my room holding a paper. We found something, he said, breathless. Jakob, you really are different. He explained it in words I barely understood. My blood had something unusual. Resistance to a compound they now believe the Nazis had been testing as a weapon. A silent killer. It had wiped out thousands during the experiments. But not me. I had survived it. And now, that survival might lead to a cure. In the weeks that followed, they worked with urgency. Not just on vaccines, but on justice. The notebook I had carried across rivers and war zones helped uncover hidden camps, secret scientists, and buried crimes. Because of that book and my testimony, more than a dozen former officers were captured. Some denied everything. Others cried. But I didn't cry. I had already done all my crying. One afternoon, I stood in front of a large hall filled with journalists. Cameras flashed. A man handed me a medal. For bravery, he said. But I didn't feel brave. I felt like a boy who had lost too much. Still, I took it. For Samuel. For Ilana. For every number that didn't survive. I returned to Eli that summer. We shared a room at the home. He walked with a limp, but his smile was stronger than ever. At night, we talked about the future. Maybe we'd go to America. Maybe we'd open a bakery, just like Papa's. Do you still think about it? He asked one night. I nodded. Every day. Me too, he said. But now, we're more than just survivors. We were witnesses. Years passed. The scars faded, but the memories never did. When I turned 25, I gave a speech in Germany, in front of hundreds. I rolled up my sleeve, pointed to the number. They branded us to erase us, I said. But this number is not the end of my story. It's the beginning of the world learning the truth. People cried. Some stood. And afterward, a little boy walked up to me. He held out a notebook. Will you sign this? He asked. I want to remember you. I knelt down, took his pen, and wrote one word. Hope. Because in the end, that's what survived. Not the fear. Not the hate. Not the pain. Hope. The number 26091 was supposed to be the last one, but it became the first chapter of something that would never be forgotten.